Well. The people have spoken, and a poll of almost 4,000 Gears of War fans has shown that they think wall bouncing is a good part of Gears multiplayer. But do these numbers tell the whole story? Let's get into it. Hello Gears and gaming fans, and welcome back to Gears Intel. I am your weary host KDB, and I come to you today for a little chat about Gears of War and what wall bouncing might mean for the upcoming new game in the series, Gears of War E-Day. We are, of course, still hot off the back of the reveal of the new game. Gears of War is still very much buzzing and still in the conversation, which is kind of why this video is happening, to be honest. First of all, a quick disclaimer. A lot of the footage that you're going to see in this video today are from my first dive back into the Gears 5 multiplayer in a long time. I did tweet that I generally prefer horde mode and campaign these days, but yes, I jumped back into the multiplayer and got absolutely slaughtered, so that's the footage you'll be seeing for the most part. But I still had fun. It was a blast. Anyway, before I get to the main topic of today, firstly a quick bit of news. Gears of War continues to be back, and now we have the numbers to show it, because as reported by trueachievements.com, Gears of War Ultimate Edition sees a 323% Xbox player spike following the E-Day reveal. Using a sample size of over 2.4 million Xbox accounts, our latest Xbox gameplay chart data, courtesy of Gaming Insights, shows Gears of War Ultimate Edition saw a massive 323% rise in Xbox players in the week following the Gears of War E-Day reveal. This is quotes lifted directly from the article on trueachievements.com. However, it's not just Gears of War Ultimate Edition that has seen a resurgence in Xbox players following the E-Day announcement. While the Ultimate Edition didn't quite make it into this week's chart, Gears 5 did manage to sneak in and claim 34th place. Our data shows a 66% spike in Xbox players for Gears 5 since the reveal. Additionally, Gears of War 4 saw a similar Xbox player increase of 64% over the same period. Gears of War 2 and Gears of War 3 have also seen an increase in players. Before the reveal, both games sat outside the top 200 most played Xbox games. We only collect gameplay data from the top 200. But this week, Gears of War 2 climbed all the way up to 121st position, while Gears of War 3 made it a little bit higher to 109th. For those wondering about the original Xbox 360 version of Gears of War, it did not chart in our top 200. So, this is obviously amazing to see. Like I've mentioned, Gears of War is having a moment, and I've of course been playing it myself. I'm seeing friends of mine play it and other people in the community play it. Big shout out to my First Aid Spray podcast buddy Steve, who has been smashing through the original trilogy and sharing his thoughts on Twitter as well. It's a little bit like the Fallout buzz that's been happening as well. For those that don't know, I am a big Fallout fan. I do talk about Fallout a lot on a Fallout podcast, Tapes from the Wastes. And yeah, the way that game franchise saw a big resurgence after the arrival of the TV show, the arrival of the new trailer has seen a resurgence for the Gears of War games. And yeah, you love to see it. It's really cool to just kind of be experiencing the moment and the buzz that Gears of War is having. We haven't had it for a long time now. Yeah, and I'm just kind of enjoying every second of it, really. If you want some more E-Day updates, please do go and check the previous video on the channel, which covered the Windows Central article and comments from the Coalition about what we can expect from the new game. I did have a few people comment on that video because I used the words multiplayer confirmed in the thumbnail, and people were like, well, duh, of course there's going to be multiplayer, it's Gears of War. And it's like, yes, I know that's what we all hoped for, of course. But if you were around the conversation when the game was launched, when the trailer was launched, you will have seen that there was no mention of multiplayer in the article, no mention in any of these interviews, and that's what prompted Jez Corden to ask the question to the Coalition, is it going to have multiplayer? So it was a perfectly valid question. It was a question that lots of people had. So on that topic of multiplayer and the topic of wall bouncing, which has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks, what could this mean for E-Day and its appeal? Before I jump into it, the reason I wanted to make this video is because I've seen so much of that back and forth about Gears in the last couple of weeks, and not just about the multiplayer and wall bouncing, but also about the story and abandoning Gears 5 and Are we ever going to get a Gears 6? Should we ever return to that story, or should we focus on Marcus and Dom and a new E-Day trilogy, all that kind of stuff? Most of the conversation has been awesome, but I did see a little bit of gatekeeping and people implying that there is a quote-unquote right way to play the game and only one correct story route. And I don't want to give too much time to that stuff, but I did put a tweet about it that sums up my feelings there as well. I love the conversation, just don't be a dick about it. This community is diverse, and so are its opinions. So, specifically speaking about wall bouncing, yes, the poll we did, 66.5% said yes, it is a good thing for Gears of War multiplayer. 33.5% said no. Firstly, just quickly, what is wall bouncing, if you don't know? It's not a technique I use myself, but as you can see from the clips on screen now, it's a movement technique where you can quickly change direction and slide around in many directions, making it harder for your opponents to track you, while also, you know, getting off a few quick shots yourself. Thank you to those who supplied clips for the video, by the way. As I said, I'm not somebody that utilizes or even knows really how to do the wall bouncing thing. I've been playing Gears of War since Christmas Day 2006. I've seen every corner of the multiplayer. I've come across all kinds of players in my near 20 years with the franchise. And wall bouncers have always been there, really, and the prominence has increased more and more as the years have gone on. The way that wall bouncing works has slightly changed. It's got a bit more, you know, it's got faster and a bit crazier in the more recent games. And obviously it takes skill and time to learn to do well, and it's wild to see people get multiple kills when they're using the tactic, and, you know, just some people are unable to touch them as they're bouncing around the maps. And it's not cheating. I've seen some people call it cheating. It falls into this weird scenario where it's pushing the mechanics of the game to its limits. It's not glitching, it's not breaking through anything, it's just really, really pushing the movement about as far as it can go. I personally don't really like it, but it just doesn't bother me that much. It kind of removes a lot of what is appealing about Gears to me in the first place, which is the slower based cover shooter stuff, you know? And I know there'll be people out there saying the only people that don't like wall bouncing are those that can't do it. And I've never tried to do it, to be honest with you. It's not a technique I've ever practiced. It's, as I say, it removes stuff from Gears of War that I enjoy. So it's not a technique I would ever favour, really. I'm not really sure what the return on investment is, because Gears is obviously a squad game, and I've been in matches where there will be wall bouncers that seem to do great, and they kill me loads, and then there's others where it makes no difference. So yeah, you can be a wall bouncer in a match and still lose, and if you're just playing for yourself and you don't care about the team winning, then that's fine. And there's modes in Gears of War where that is more relevant. It's a technique that seems to be used a lot by some of the more professional players. I've never been personally a part of the Gears esports scene. It's not really something I've paid too much attention to, but I know it was huge back in the day. I've watched a little bit here and there, but yeah, from what I understand, some of the more pro and, if you want, hardcore players will practice and use this technique. But weirdly, I don't see it that much in-game, kind of out in the wild. When I think about all the years in the past where I've been playing Gears of War, you will come across a wall bouncer maybe for a few games in a row, but then you might not see one for a couple of days. So yeah, you never know. They do show up from time to time, but I think it is a small percentage of the player base. But when it comes to the hardcore community, they're prominent, which, as you can see by this poll. So, you know, our following on Twitter is small, but we got 4,000 votes in this poll, or nearly 4,000 votes. And I think most of the people that voted in it were probably, you know, quote unquote hardcore Gears of War fans, or really, really into the franchise. So there will be a lot of people who take the multiplayer more seriously. And yeah, it does take skill. I have nothing against people that wall bounce. If you want to spend your time practicing it for, you know, a few more kills here and there, that's completely cool. It's not something that I see myself ever planning to use, especially as I move more and more away from the multiplayer, just because, you know, getting old and slow, my reactions aren't as good as they used to be. But then, of course, there's pro players that I've seen that don't wall bounce at all. It's not the only technique. People seem to imply that, you know, the skill gap between the casuals and the top is, well, everyone at the top is wall bouncing. I'm not sure that's the case. But as I said, I'm kind of ignorant to the esports scene, so let me know if I'm wrong. That's fine. We're going to be talking more about esports on the main show in the future, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, as I say, I just kind of ignore it. It doesn't make too much difference to me. It feels very much a part of Gears. I don't see it going anywhere. It's never completely ruined my experience, but I'm also just kind of used to it. Now, I know there will be people out there that don't like it at all, and it will completely put them off playing Gears. Now, this is where the sort of most interesting part of the conversation comes up, because the poll we did got over 150 replies, and there was definitely a lot of support for wall bouncing, but there were also a lot of people who were very against it and saying things like, this is the thing that's going to keep the general audience away from Gears of War. When they see clips like this of people bouncing around, then it's just going to put them off, because they're just going to think it's unplayable and too sweaty for them. So, which I get, I completely understand. And I suppose when it comes to E-Day, we're going to be seeing a few tweaks to the gameplay. Or at least I hope we do. I want to see some freshening up here and there. I do wonder if they're going to slow things down a little bit, because we're sort of leaning back more towards the original style. That's what they've hinted at. And yeah, and I wonder if we will step away from the more crazy wall bouncing that you've seen in Gears 4 and 5. To me, it seems that's where the craziest stuff is. That the most insane clips, I think, are from 3 onwards. And like I said at the start of the video, it seems like, yeah, the wall bouncing has got more nuts as time has gone on. And if you log in and play Gears of War now, like I did recently, I definitely saw a few, because I think a lot of the people that have stuck around are those hardcore, more professional, you know, high skill level players. And when there's a low player base, that can make it daunting, because, you know, you'll jump back in and you'll just get absolutely slaughtered. But when there's a large player base with the launch of a new game, you'll probably see those types of players less. So, as I say, it's not really that much of an issue. I think we want Gears of War E-Day to be a success. We want it to bring in new fans. I think they're doing the right thing with the root of the game to do that, by taking it back to the beginning and starting, you know, giving an entry point for new players that don't really have to have played Gears, any of the other Gears, really. And then they're also tapping into the nostalgia in all of us that want to go back to that more horror style that the previous games have moved away from. Not that they're completely devoid of horror, but you know what I'm saying. If I was to venture a prediction for the future and for E-Day, I would say wall bouncing is probably going to still be a thing that is present in the game. I don't see them getting rid of it. I think they would have to quite fundamentally change the way Gears of War plays to completely remove wall bouncing. But perhaps some tweaks to the pacing, maybe a cooldown meter. You know, maybe wall bouncing is embraced as, yeah, this is a thing that you can do, but you can't do it constantly. Because I think that's one of the most frustrating things for somebody like me who doesn't use the technique and can have plenty of fun in a match from people that are bouncing around. Like I say, I don't mind. When you just see it constantly, just kind of like, it turns it into a bit like a cartoon. And, you know, I'm not saying that I need full realism here, but it breaks some of the immersion and it gets a bit ridiculous. So I kind of wouldn't be opposed to there being, some kind of cooldown meter. It's like, the wall bouncing is a technique, but maybe you've got stamina. Maybe these characters you're playing as can only sprint for so long, they can only spin around for so long, so maybe that comes into the game a little bit and it evens out the playing field. Maybe there can be a mode where the stamina is completely turned off, so, you know, for those that want to wall bounce to their heart's content non-stop, they can fill their boots in a mode with no stamina meter. Just a thought. But yeah, it was interesting to see the results of the poll. I wouldn't call it a landslide. I mean, it kind of is. 60-30 is, you know, it's a big gap. But like I mentioned, there's a lot of hardcore Gears fans in our following. So I think a lot of those people were voting in the poll. But I am outside of the fandom as well, and I see the opinion of the people that are outside of the hardcore players, and it feels like the non-hardcore players don't like it. And it's not just because they can't do it, it's not what they're playing the game for. There are times where in the past I would call myself a hardcore player of Gears of War. There were times where I took the multiplayer very seriously. I never wall bounced, and I still did really well. And, you know, I wanted to always try and find ways to kind of counteract the wall bouncing, and I never went down the route of learning it myself. And I just don't want to these days. Like I say, it's not something I enjoy. It breaking the immersion is one way of putting it, but it just, like I say, it just isn't what I enjoy about Gears. When I think of something like Call of Duty, which is way more fast-paced, that's what I don't really enjoy. It's too twitchy. It's too, you know, spawn, shoot, die, spawn, shoot, die, spawn, shoot, die kind of thing. Whereas Gears always I felt the advantage it had, and the reason it appealed to me so much was you can take your time when you're facing off against someone. There's back and forth. You can go into cover. You can shoot over cover. You can have a sniping battle. You can roll around each other. You know, the sort of rolling shotguns that we talk about. It's all such good fun, and it gets less fun when somebody's just, you know, pinballing across the walls. And yeah, it's there. I tolerate it. It's not something I enjoy or will ever do. Certainly now, like I say, as I'm getting older, where my multiplayer pro days, if you like, I was never a pro, but my more hardcore multiplayer days are probably over. But, you know, maybe I can come back. Maybe there's hope for me yet. If the multiplayer for E-Day is freshened up in a way that makes it more accessible for me, I might be there. Might be gunning for the top of those leaderboards. But yes, thank you to everyone who voted in the poll. Please do keep the conversation going. Like I said earlier, don't be a dick about it. Wall bouncing doesn't mean you're the best player of Gears of War ever. You can like wall bouncing, you can hate wall bouncing. It doesn't matter. Just be cool about it. What do you think about it? If you didn't vote in the poll, let me know in the comments below. Do you think it should be a feature that is in multiplayer in E-Day, or do you think it will put new players off? Because that's the thing. If it looks too scary and too daunting, the player base doesn't grow, then the game dies a death. And that's not good for Gears of War. We want players. The more players, the better. Please do check out the full episodes of the podcast as well, which you can find on this YouTube channel and in podcast feeds. As I've said, you can follow us on Twitter at Gears_Intel. Give us a like on the video, give us a review on your podcast platform of choice, and spread the good word about Gears Intel. We will, of course, be bringing more videos and more podcast episodes very soon. There's going to be so much to cover on the road to E-Day. And thank you to everybody that's been engaging with us and the new subscribers and helping the channel grow, helping the podcast grow. Yeah, it's awesome. We're a small corner of the Gears of War fandom, but it's great to have you here. Thank you for watching. As always, until next time, remember the fallen.
It is the sound of 1,000,000 human voices begging for mercy.